Hello guys, my name is Mateusz Stefańczyk. On a daily basis, I work as an Angular team leader in House of Angular. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. But also before I start with my presentation, I really want to congratulate to David because your presentation was really awesome and great, well structured. So congratulations, David. I will skip this part because you already know, we know that we are also having the blog, which is called Angular.love. We are supporting this blog. We're supporting a lot of community effort. As a House of Angular, we are sponsors of NgRx, NgNeet, NX, and a lot of meetups around Europe. We are also running our own community. And recently, Angular.love has rewrite its blog to be fully based on the Angular. This project is completely open source, so you can deep dive into the code, see how we have done it, how we apply there in action some recent features. It also was some big effort, community effort from our team. So we are also extremely open to hear your voice if something is, in your opinion, done well, or we should correct something. Just we are extremely open for your feedback. And today we are going to talk about the custom store feature in NgRx Signal Store. How many of you is familiar or are familiar with NgRx tooling? Okay, so not that much. I see there one guy with headphones is not familiar as well, but hopefully he will learn something. Okay, so today we will take a look at the evolution of NgRx state management tooling, because this tooling is evolving alongside with Angular. So there is a lot of similarities what's going on in Angular and what's going on then with NgRx state management. Then we'll make a brief introduction to the Signal Store and the custom store features. And finally, we'll see in action how we utilize custom store features during creation of Angular.love block, and we will do some quasi-live coding of rewriting some kind of the functionality to be done in scope of the custom store features. So starting with evolution of NgRx state management, it's evolving with discussions around of the community and how Angular is approaching some kind of the features. So let's say when we had the time in the past where there was a lot of discussion how we should manage the state of our component, that it should be more local, narrow to the components, they introduced the component store because there was the need, there was the discussion in the community, and all of the people agreed that this kind of the tooling might be very helpful. Right now we have the signals in the Angular. Angular is doing a lot of things with a functional approach, and it's end up with new state management being the Signal Store, NgRx Signal Store, that's it. So it's evolving alongside with Angular. And for those who are familiar, this picture might be very familiar, but for some other people, it might be something new. So this was the very first state management library released by the NgRx. It's inspired by some pattern called Redux, and it involves a lot of effort to build something around it. Yeah, so it has its advantages, but also disadvantages. So the advantage of this solution is fact that every single action and activities across of this kind of the state management has its own dedicated file and place to take. What is the disadvantage? It's a lot of boilerplate to really implement even the simple, I don't know, requests or something like that. Yeah. So there are some disadvantages and benefits, but how it usually, and we also call it global state because it's like the single slice of the state per entire application. Yeah. So you don't have possibility to have like multiple more narrow slices with exactly same type of the data, but dedicated for particular components. It's technically possible, but it's not what this state management is for. It's more global one. And how it usually works is that we have our component which dispatch the actions. And actions being listened in scope of the reducers and effects. Reducers are for updating our store with based on the particular action and payload they are getting. And effects usually are responsible for handling some kind of the maybe logic and making the request. So as you see in the picture, they are reaching somewhere outside of our application through the service. In most cases, it's database. They are fetching the data from the database, and again, effects are dispatching them own action. And this action is, again, listened in the reducer. Reducer update our store, and whenever our store being updated, the selectors, which are some kind of the listeners for the changes of specific property in store, updating our components. And we usually work in this kind of the circle. And whenever we want to fetch the books, update the book, we need to create again a new action. But it's usually a group of the actions because we want to track a lot of information. So first we say, fetch me the books. If we saying fetch me the books, we are also saying like the books being fetched and so on. Then we are saying the books, for example, were successfully fetched or fetched without success. Yeah, so there is an error. So usually it involves 3 actions for example, 1 request. So that's from where the boilerplate was coming from. And recently, in recent years, there was also some big effort to minimalize this kind of the boilerplate, but it's still there. We are not able to minimize everything. So the next iteration was kind of the lighter edition of the state management. It was the component store. And this component store allows us to create multiple independent states, even the same states per the various components, much smaller, but it also had its own disadvantages. So maybe it was more narrow, more dedicated for the component, but in the time of the creation, a lot of the projects already were in the NgRx store. They were based on the NgRx store. And this component store has been fulfilling the role of some kind of the facade. But also, as you can see on this picture, that's what I said, that the NgRx store had this possibility of having everything in the separate file. Here, almost everything, despite of the selects, has to be in the single file. And when the people has been utilizing this component store too much and putting too much logic there, they have been growing rapidly, extremely fast, and became hard to maintain, hard to test, because, for example, at the left side where we have NgRx store, we can test only selectors, we can test only reducers, we can test only effects. In component store, even if we are testing only select, we need to prepare the mocks for everything. So it was not easy to maintain as well. And right now we are at the 3rd iteration of the state management, where we have the Signal Store. And Signal Store, using the Signal Store is very similar in the usage like building something from the Lego blocks. So they provide us with multiple blocks which we can utilize to create our state. And the custom store features are the blocks which we are able to create by our own. So from the blocks they are just providing us, we can distinguish with state, which is simply the function to define our state. So what is the structure of our state? Usually we provide the structure and the initial state value. Then with methods, which allow us to define the methods in scope of our state. With computed, which let us to define computed properties from other computed properties or from the initial state. And with hooks, which are very similar to the hooks we have in the Angular component, so ng on init and ng on destroy to do something during this time span. Also, there are some more like with entities and so on, so we can distinguish more kind of the blocks. What is very specific, all of these blocks are a Signal Store feature. So we are able to create Signal Store feature, but itself, when using the NgRx Signal Store feature, we are Signal Store state, we're utilizing Signal Store features created by the core team, yeah? So when we are building, we are building or exactly same things they are just delivering to us. Okay, so we'll take a look how simply it is to create the state using the store using this library. So we need to define it using the function, which is called Signal Store. And then we can start utilizing the particular blocks. So we are saying that we build it with the state. State will contain the books library, which is type of the books. We can define that there will be the methods for adding the books, we can define the computed, which will be filter for us the books which are, I don't know, for us to rent and so on. And this kind of the simple free blocks we utilize to create the very simple bookstore. And right now we have custom store feature, which is our blank block, which we can utilize the way we really want. So right now I will go to some examples from our repository, how we have utilized this functionality. So first, let's take a see what kind of the Signal Store features we have in our block right now. So we have the Signal Store feature for language, and simply what's it doing? It's just mapping the currently selected language from the translocal to Signal. And right now, having this kind of the feature, which is called with lang state, we are able to provide the information about the language to any kind of the Signal Store we have in our application. Yeah, so we encapsulate the logic of fetching the information about the language into simple Signal Store feature, and we can utilize it right now in multiple places. Same thing apply with CEO. So we have defined kind of the methods like setting the meta, setting the title. We wrap it around the Signal Store feature, and we utilize it in the place where we need to set these particular properties. And we do it once. We don't repeat this logic anymore because we have it encapsulated in scope of the Signal Store feature. And right now, if our application is fully based on the Signal Store, it's extremely easy to encapsulate some repeatable logic there and use it everywhere we want. Yeah, so by applying this kind of the feature, our store get it capabilities. Yeah, so right now by providing with CEO here, our article detail store will have access to two methods, set meta and set article. We can maybe see even how they are being used. Let's see. Okay. It's CEO service. Yeah, we can see, for example, there we simply make store.setMeta, and this store already have these methods because we set it there. Same, it's already have access to the language because we defined that using this custom store feature. And what we will do right now, we have kind of the page which user being navigate to after Manfred is here, but he's also here. So yeah, wherever we test, like search for something like that test, okay, it's suddenly not working. I broke something. Okay, let me see what's the problem then. I hope it should be fine, but it's not. Dominic just make something when I was on the coffee. Okay, it's here. It's not able to create this computed for me. It's happen when you make TS ignore too often. Okay, it's not able to create this computed. And this one will work. Oh, I see. Okay, let me just bring the whole structure back. Now should be fine. So again, we test for something, and we have the list of our articles on our blog. And as you can see, there is small query parameter at the very top, which is Q, a QL test. And right now, whenever we refresh, we are able to like reproduce the recent state of your search. And how it's currently work, it's done using, we have the presenter service. I don't know whether you are familiar with this kind of the services or not, but they are some kind of the services for the purpose of the specific component. And in this kind presenter service, we have some inject route search params service function, which bring to us current query and current page. And with these parameters in scope of our constructor, component constructor, we call the search method from the state with this search payload parameters. And what we will try to do, we'll try to keep this functionality working, but get rid of need for containing these parameters in scope of the presenter, and also get rid of calling it from the constructor. Yeah? So that will be the final structure of our code, and that's what we are reaching to. What we need to do, we need to create the custom feature for ourselves, which will take the parameters from the query and make them the part of our state. So instead of fetching the data based on the informations from presenter, our search list store will start fetching this information whenever it's being init. And for this purpose, we'll need the new Signal Store feature, which I called withQueryParam. And what it will be doing, it will accept as a parameter the object containing the, let's see how it will look like. So here we will pass an object as a parameter containing the name of the query, of the parameter we are looking for. So in our case, it was Q, as I well remember, and its initial value. And there was also the page, and its initial value was 1. So this way, we will say to our feature that initialize my state with this kind of the query parameters as a part of the store. And what we will do there, I already have this code because Natalia said that I will fail in the live coding for sure, so don't do it. Okay, I said, okay, I will not do it for you. So what we need to do, so first, I will create my initial state, and I simply doing it by iterating over the keys of my config, which is this object, and setting the key value as an initial state. Yeah, so it will end up with mostly same object we are passing. Yeah, so it will end up with Q being the string and page being the 1. So by having this initial state, we can start returning our Signal Store feature. So we start with saying with state, which accept the initial state, which I said being exactly this what we passed there. And then we define the hook. And we say that whenever it's being init, lets it map our queries to contain the values from the snapshot, because that's what we already have in our presenter. So if we look at our presenter, we have been saying that the page being the query param get page 1, and the query has been snapshot query param get Q. So right now, I move this entire logic to be triggered in scope of the onInit of the store, which will inject this feature. And again, here I iterate over the config and patching the state. So right now, I simply updating the properties of the state to contain the values from query param. If not, let's take the default value again. I simply, with that code, I am able right now to say to my Signal Store, that which is aware right now that it contains the Q and page, that he should call onInit search method with these parameters. So we can simply do there with hooks, say onInit store, and we have the search method, which is based on the Rx method. It's some kind of the utility to make some RxJS based code in scope of the Signal Store. And it accepts the object containing the query and page. So right now we don't have this object, but we are able to create it from our query params. So I will create new computed property. Let's name it search params. We can right now say it contains Q and page because we define it there. So here we have access to the entire store. And we can say that the query being Q and page being page, but also they are signals. So I need to make sure to read it properly. Expected. Okay. I see. It's like that. Okay. And right now, what I can do, I can also don't take entire store. I can take search params, search as well. It's fine. And search and say that I'm calling the search with search params. It starts complaining, but we'll ignore it for the while. Let's see whether it's working right now. So we don't have call to presenter in our constructor. We have everything hidden in scope of the search list store. So it should work. So let's refresh. Yeah, and as you can see, it's working exactly the same, but right now, all kind of the informations I need are encapsulated in my search store. They simply synchronize with our router query params, and we have everything in single place. And what's more, we have extremely reusable Signal Store feature, because utilizing the query params, you will be utilizing them in multiple places across of an application you are creating. So it's extremely reusable feature. You can even extend it further, like it can contain the methods to set the query params. It can contain the methods to read some query params with custom converter, because that's what we are doing in our projects in real life. Yeah, so this config is slightly extended, so it's accept the default value like that. Let's say this way, but it's also accept the converter, because it's simply like the string right now. Yeah, but it might be that it will be the filters, and the filters are the objects. So what we are doing, you will say, okay, I need the converter which say like read, and the way I read my parameters, and also like to set them, yeah, because we need to convert them to some string, for example, yeah. So these values might map differently set. It's kind of the example. I don't say it might be like one-to-one this way, but that's probably what more kind of the advanced cases will need to. But as you can see simply on this example, Signal Store feature is extremely powerful tool which let us to build custom blocks which we can utilize across of the various states in our application. Okay, and that was it. So if you have some questions.
So let's jump into our Q&A session, and we already have our first question.
Okay, thanks. So you said that your blog is open source. Does it contain some examples of this feature?
Signal Store features?
Yes.
Yeah, so that...
So we can just check it out and see how it works in real life, yeah?
Yeah. So you can give me the mic because I need to... Okay, I can say like that. Yeah, okay, so the question was whether the blog is open source and you can really see in action this kind of the Signal Store features. Yeah, so it's being open source. This specific is not there yet, but we can add it. Maybe we'll do, but there are some other extremely useful Signal Store features. So definitely you can take a look, and despite of like the CEO and so on, there is some other very common. It was first introduced by Alex Okrushko in some other cases in the previous iterations of the state management, which is called call state, where we also have it's wrapped as kind of the feature. And what call state is doing, it's letting you to set in what kind of the state is your, maybe not the state, because we are doing it mostly entities. So let's say, maybe not the entities as well, because you can apply it to the entities, but you can also apply it to entire state. But it's about managing the current state of your state management, let's say. So we can say it's loading, it's in progress, it's loaded, and so on. So it's about that, managing this kind of the states, yeah? So we utilize it in a lot of cases. As you can see, it's mostly for utilizing the informations where the article details has been fetched and so on. and it's automatically create for us the properties dedicated for providing these informations. Yeah, so you can simply by adding with call state fetch article details, it creates for us property able to contain this information. Yeah, so we can say fetch article details call state loading, and based on that you might, I don't know, display the spinner. Yeah, and then when we fetch this, it says there is an error or it's already loaded. Yeah, so this is kind of the feature we utilize, and probably all kind of the business stores in our application are utilizing it for fetching the informations, for applying the informations about the fetching state. Yeah, but it's not only for fetching. That's the most common use case, but you can utilize it in the various other cases.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have this one question. Imagine situation. Tomorrow you have your client and they want you to create application from the scratch. Of course, you decide to use Angular for front-end.
Yes.
And now you need to decide what state management library to use. So do you have algorithm how to decide which store you would use, or you just go with something specific?
No, I have no doubts that I will use NgRx. Yeah. And which one of them I will use for particular use case it's per use case. Yeah. Because maybe for some of them I will say like the Redux base is the best one, but I'm not saying it. But for sure I will go with NgRx. Yeah. I used to work with NgXS and also love this state management. Really, it's great. And if I will have to work with it tomorrow, I will not like join the project and say, no, we guys need to rewrite it to be NgRx or something, you know. But when I start from scratch, I really like what the Signal Store right now provides. It's extremely flexible and powerful for me. Some other questions?
Yep.
Okay, there is.
Okay.
Thanks so much. So I have a question about which store is better, because now I'm advocating about Signal Store project, and my teammate asked question about how to say supporting, and which maybe have some insights about future features and so on, and how it.
Yeah. So your friend has doubts whether it will be supported. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for sure it will be supported. Like all of them are supported. You know, that's probably the safest one in terms of the support, I would say, from the state management perspective. Yeah, because during this entire time we had a bunch of the state management libraries, and NgXS is, for example, great library, but has pretty slow support, I would say. Also, there was state management Akita, which a lot of people really likes in the past. I don't know what's going on with this library. I don't hear about it anymore. Yeah, is it still being supported or no? I'm not sure, but there is not a lot of news from this platform. So NgRx was all this time supported, and what's more, it's just still delivering some new features and new state management libraries. So for sure it will be supported.
Because we have questions about component store, because it's not supported so good as and so
yeah,
that's why I asked about.
Yeah, so I think like with component store, you have to look at the Signal Store as a replacement for component store. That's why it might looks like it not being. I think it's supported, but it's not being. How to say? There is no new upcoming features. Yeah, so it's stable. If there will be bug, they will fix this bug, but they are not putting new stuff there. That's how I see it.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, we have more questions in the chat. So first will be from Satsuya21. How to unit test those stores with Karma and Jasmine?
Yeah, so it's a tough question, to be honest, and there was no clear pattern how to test it yet, and this discussion being still open probably on the GitHub. I was even involved in that one. So there is no strict guidelines yet, but they should be soon, and we'll have best practices and way to test this.
Okay, thank you. And one last question from Alexei. Do you know if NgRx team works or have plans on improving language services for Signal Store? Now go to implementation on Signal Store computed or method goes to the Signal Store type?
Yes, and I think it was fixed in the recent versions. It's there, so let's see. Yes, so this one is again like moving us to, okay, but yeah, so this is then this advantage, but I believe it was somehow fixed in the recent version. So the answer simply is yes, they are working on this one, they are still improving. And for example, there in the past was situation where you could create, because you might like repeat these blocks again. So there was possibility to create like with computed, and let's quickly do it. I could name it return test. Let's say it was some kind of the computed, and you could let it be like that, and you could repeat this computed then, because there are cases where you will be repeating these blocks, or as for example you might utilize some Signal Store feature, and then in the store which is using it, by mistake you might override the property. And there was possibility, because this is older version of the NgRx in our block right now, that this test is overriding this test, and it's not arising you any kind of the issue. So for example, in the recent version, it's already fixed. So you will get an error in this kind of the scenarios, yeah? Sorry, so even if there I will have the test property, it will already throw an error here for me. Because with this encapsulating a lot of logic, there is high probability that by mistake you will override some kind of the properties. So yes, they are working on this, and it's still improving from version to version.
Okay,
there's
great.
A question.
Oh, okay. One more.
Yeah. I forgot to ask about the debugging tool, because in NgRx we get cool stuff for it. And what about the Signal Store? So
Manfred probably can answer this question as well, since Rainer is working on some debugging tool, yeah? So maybe you can provide us with some insights.
Would you like to add something?
Yeah, sure. The thing is, the Angular team will officially add some features to the Angular debug console for visualizing signals. And what we did, we have this NgRx toolkit, and it has several such custom features like we have seen here, like with call state and so on. And there is with NgRx debug tools, or perhaps just with debug tools. And if you call this method, then you can use the NgRx debugger to just look into your different stores. And so you can find out at runtime what's going on there, which state you have there, and so on. Yeah. And besides this, the Angular team, as mentioned, will also allow to visualize signals eventually.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so there is tooling for that one.
Yep. Okay, so we've reached the end of our Q&A session. Thank you, Matt, once again.
Thank you.